Music is written on a grid of 5 lines called a staff or stave. A piece of sheet music called a manuscript will have several of these staffs on a page. If the musical instrument has a small range of notes like a saxophone or a guitar, then a melody can be written on one staff and will look something like this. The notes are read from the left to the right, and in this case, one staff at a time. If the musical instrument has a large range of notes like a piano, then one staff will not be sufficient to record all of the notes. In this case, 2 staffs are tied together and the notes are written over both of them, which will look something like this. So here the notes of the 2 staffs are read together. Usually with piano music, the right hand will play the notes on the top staff while the left hand will play the notes on the lower staff, but this is not always the case. Now let's have a brief overview of some of the features that you would find on a piece of music using piano sheet music as an example. At the top of the page will be the title of the music and the composer. In this case, it is Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. At the top of the page on the left will be some information on the tempo or speed of the music. This may be written in words and may be in a foreign language, or an indication of the beats per minute according to a metronome. So in this case, it is to be played very moderate with a tempo of 80 beats per minute. The staffs will be divided into smaller sections called bars or measures, and the lines that divide them are called bar lines or measure lines. The bar lines at certain places in the music may change depending on their purpose. An example of this might be a double line to indicate the end of a principal section, or double lines with 2 dots to indicate that a section needs to be repeated. Each staff will have a clef which will give an indication of the notes associated with that staff. Here we have a treble clef or G clef on the top staff and a bass clef or F clef on the lower staff. This is the usual way of presenting music, but it's possible to have 2 treble clefs or 2 bass clefs together. It really depends on the notes being played and the best way to represent those notes in sheet music. Other orchestral instruments may use a different clef called an alto clef or a tenor clef, and the music for a guitar may be written in tab form. Next to the clef will be the key signature. This will either consist of 1 or more sharps or 1 or more flats, or it will be blank. The key signature shows what key the music is in and makes reading and writing music easier. The music may change key or modulate, resulting in a change of the key signature. The key signature is repeated on each line. This music is in the key of B flat. Next to the key signature will be the time signature. Here we have the letter C meaning 4/4 time, but it is usual to see 2 numbers one over the other. The time signature shows how many beats there are to the bar and the length of each beat. The time signature appears at the beginning of a piece of music and is not repeated. If the time signature changes during the music, then a new time signature will be written at the place where the change occurs and will not be repeated. The musical notes themselves are written on the staff and follow strict rules on how the notes fit within the bars or cross over the bar lines. Lastly, there will be some notation around the notes called ornamentation, which gives more information how these notes should be played, such as whether soft or loud, or when the sustain pedal on a piano should be used. Some piano sheet music may also have numbers to indicate which fingers would be best used in certain situations. On this particular piece of sheet music, we can see how the key is about to be changed from B flat to A flat. Now that we have an idea of how the music is laid out, let's look at these aspects in more detail, starting with the notes. The staff has 5 lines, and the notes are either placed on the lines or in the spaces between the lines. We only use the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, and G to represent notes in music, and these letters are repeated as we move into a higher octave. Each of these notes can be sharpened or flattened. It is best to understand the relationship of these notes with each other by looking at their arrangement on a keyboard, since the notes are laid out in a straightforward way. The black notes can be referred to by 2 different names, which we call enharmonics. When you move up a piano, the next closest note is a half tone or semitone away. So starting at C, if we move up to the next closest note, a half tone away, we would get to C sharp or D flat. We can continue up the piano in this fashion. When we move up from a note by a half tone, we can refer to this as sharpening a note. When we move down by a half tone, we can refer to this as flattening a note. This gives us the basis why notes can have different names. So this note is called A sharp because it's the next closest note to A going up the piano. It is also called B flat because it is the next closest note to B going down the piano. When we go up in pitch by a half tone, we sharpen, and when we go down by a half tone, we flatten the note. It is not only black notes that have two names. This note is F, but we can also call it E sharp because it is the next closest note to E going up. Even though notes can be called by different names, there is only one correct name in any given situation based on rules such as what key the music is in. Now that we understand the relationship between the notes, let's see how they are recorded in sheet music. The treble clef has a curly part to the cymbal which sits on the second line of the clef. The line that it sits on is G, and that is why it's also called the G clef. Any note in this line will be G. The bass clef has two dots that surround the fourth line of the other staff. This line is F, and that is why it's also called the F clef. So any note on this line will be F. So now we can fill in the other notes ascending or descending from the F or G line indicated by these clefs. Remember, we only use the letters A to G, and we repeat these letters. So after G comes A again. When we run out of lines or spaces, we draw a shorter line called a ledger line so that we can continue adding notes. When the ledger line makes it too difficult to read these notes above the top staff or below the lower staff, we can either lower or raise these notes by an octave and use a symbol indicating that these notes should be played either higher or lower accordingly. All the notes under this line are written an octave lower than they are actually played. Obviously, if your instrument only uses one staff, either with the treble clef or bass clef, then you only need to learn the notes associated with that staff. To make learning these notes easier, you can memorize these sentences starting with the letters of the notes on the line or in the spaces. But the more you practice these notes, the easier it will become to learn them. Here are some other things to help with learning the notes. Middle C, which is the C note in the middle of the piano, can be written on the first ledger line below the top staff, or on the first ledger line above the lower staff. They are the same note. Also, the note two ledger lines above the top staff or two ledger lines below the lower staff are also C, although in a different octave. To sharpen or flatten a note, simply add a sharp or flat sign in front of it. We call this an accidental. When you do this, only the following notes on the line or space will be affected until the end of the bar where the effect is cancelled. To restore the following note on the line or space back to their normal pitch, a natural sign is used. If a note is already sharpened or already flattened, this may be due to the key signature, and you want to sharpen it or flatten it again, then simply add a double sharp or a double flat symbol in front of the note. The key signature lets us know which notes in the music should be played as sharps or flats without constantly writing accidentals in the music. Here is a melody with lots of sharp accidentals. Here is the same melody with a key signature. The notes that had the accidentals in front of them no longer have them, since this particular key signature tells us that the F, C's and G's should all be played as sharps, so there is no need to write these sharp accidentals in the music. This makes the music easier to read. You just need to remember which notes are indicated in the key signature. If the key signature shows that all Fs are to be played as F sharp, and you want to play a particular F note as F natural, then add a natural sign in front of the note. If you want to sharpen a note that is already sharpened by the key signature, then add a double sharp in front of the note. Notes can be recorded in different time lengths and go by different names depending on which country you are living in. I've given both names here. Notice as you go down the table, the notes can be subdivided into smaller equal notes. For each note, there is also an equivalent rest note of the same time duration. The lengths of the notes are better understood in relation to the bar and the time signature. The time signature consists of two numbers, one above the other. The top number in simple time tells us how many beats there are to the bar. The lower number tells us the length of those beats. So in 4/4 time, there are 4 beats to the bar, and each beat lasts the duration of a quarter note, also known as a crotchet. This helps us to count the beats, but any length of notes may be placed in the bar, so long as they add up to, including the rest, the full total of the bar. So we count this bar in 4/4 time as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If the music has eighth notes or quavers, it will be counted as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If the music has 16th notes or semiquavers, then it would be counted as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This time signature is 3/4, which means that there are 3 beats to the bar, and each beat lasts the duration of a quarter note, also known as a crotchet. We count this as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like a waltz. The time signature is 6/8, which you may think has 6 beats to the bar, each lasting for an eighth note or quaver. It may be easier to understand the time signature in this way, but in reality this is known as compound time and has in fact 2 beats, each consisting of 3 eighth notes or 3 quavers. So this is counted as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When it comes to time signatures, they are divided into what is called simple time and compound time. If the time signature can be divided into multiples of 3, then it is a compound time. So going back to 4/4 time, we could fill the bar with 4 quarter notes, or 2 quarter notes and 4 eighth notes, or some notes and some rest which add up to the same value of 4 quarter notes. If the time signature was 3/4, then the notes and the rest would add up to 3 quarter notes or 3 crotchets. Notes can be lengthened in 2 ways. If a note has a dot after it, then it is a dotted note and lasts 1.5 times as long as a normal note. Notes may also have 2 dots. Here the note lasts an additional half of the note and an additional half of what was just added. Another way to lengthen a note is to tie 2 or more notes together. These tied notes are played as one note for the total duration of the tie. When writing notes on the staff, the stem will either point up or down, and the tail always faces to the right. This is the usual way to represent the stems of the notes, but it's up to the composer and what makes the music easier to read. Notes that are extended over the bar must use a tie. Notes are also grouped together according to the beat and logical groupings using beams which make it easier to follow the beat. Lastly, notes can be grouped into special groupings called tuplets, the most common of which being the triplet. Here the grouping of the notes will have a number either above or below the group and possibly a slur marking. The number lets us know how the notes are to be played. So the 3 notes of a triplet are played in the same time as 2 of the same notes. Different tuplets will be played in the same time as different numbers of the same notes depending on the accepted rules. Now let's put what we have learned into practice by looking again at the first lines of Rhapsody in Blue. There are a few notations around the notes which we have not covered, but I will explain some of them. First, we know for the key signature that all Bs and all Es are to be played as B flats and E flats unless otherwise indicated by an accidental. We know that the treble clef lies on the G line and the bass clef lies on the F line. We know that the note in the first ledger line below the top staff is mid C, which is the same note as the note on the first ledger line above the lower staff. We also know that 2 ledger lines above the top staff or below the lower staff are also C. We also know the letters of the notes on the lines through the sentences, such as for the treble clef, every good boy does fine, and for the spaces, face. For the bass clef, we have the sentences, good boys do fine always for the lines, and all cows eat grass for the spaces. So we can fill in the names of the notes from these indicators. The first note has 3 ledger lines. We know that the first ledger line is mid C. The next one would be A, the same as the top line of the lower staff, and the next ledger line would be F. This note could have been written on the lower staff, but having it associated with the upper staff makes it easier to read. There are 2 signs above it. The TR stands for trill, so the F and the next note above it according to the scale, which would be G, are played in rapid alternation. The other sign is a pause sign, meaning that the note is to be played a little longer than written. The note is a dotted minim or a dotted half note. A half note or minim lasts for 2 beats in 4/4 time, so this note will last for 3 beats, since a dotted note will last for 1.5 times the normal note. It will sound like this. Since the dotted half note or dotted minim lasts 3 beats, that means that there is only 1 beat left to the bar, which means that the next 17 notes must be played within 1 beat. The 17 notes starts on the same line as the first note, so it starts on the same note. From there, the notes move up on every line and every space, so this is just a B-flat scale. We can write down the notes remembering from the key signature that all B's are to be played as B-flat and all E's are to be played as E-flat. The scale run ends on the top note, which is B-flat. This note is a minim or half note which lasts for 2 beats. It also has an accent above it, which means that it is to be played a little louder than the other notes. So the scale run including this note sounds like this. Then there are 2 smaller looking notes which are grace notes. These notes should be played quickly before playing the 2 triplets. Since the first grace note is on the line below the previous note, it must be A-flat. The next grace note moves up to B-flat again. Then we move on to the triplets, each lasting for 1 beat. Remember that triplets are to be played in the same time duration of 2 of the same notes. So the triplet consisting of 3 eighth notes or quavers are to be played in the same time duration of 2 eighth notes or 2 quavers. The dots above the triplets indicate that these notes are to be played as staccato notes. That is, they are to be played a little shorter than their usual value, so there would be a little gap between each of the notes. We can work out the rest of the notes in the next bar, which is also played staccato. There is a D-flat accidental in the middle of the bar where the 2 eighth notes or quavers are tied together, so these 2 notes are played as 1/4 note or crotchet. There is also a natural sign changing the note from E-flat to E natural. On the lower staff there is another grace note B-flat, so again needs to be played quickly, and 2 chords. Chords are when 2 or more notes are played together at the same time. So the first chord, which lasts for a minimal half note, consists of the notes F, B-flat and D, and the other chord consists of E-flat, A and C sharp. The natural sign is there to remind the player that this note is not to be played as A-flat as in the line above. It is not necessary to place the natural sign here, but you will find that most music software will insert these reminders automatically in the music. In the next bar we have again 2 chords with 1 note changing in each. The first chord consists of D, A-flat and C, which changes to C-flat, and the next chord we have E-flat, G and B-flat, with the middle note G changing to G-flat. When a note is tied, it will have a slur mark between the 2 notes of the same pitch. A slur over notes of different pitches show that these notes are to be played smoothly and connected, called legato. The marking under the lower staff shows us where the sustain pedal on the piano should be used. These notes will sound like this. Listen out for the staccato played notes. Hopefully this will give you a better understanding of how to play sheet music. There are many notations that you will have to learn in order to play the music exactly as it is written, but with time you'll be able to master it. Depending on what instrument you play, you can adapt what you have learned to play the sheet music for your instrument on the staff on which it is written.